Well, thank you all for coming. It looks like we'll get started right now. I appreciate all of you taking busy time out of your day to, Dawn. It's nice to have some friends in the group too that you can razz a little bit. Honestly, I talk about money all of the time. I'm in a couple of masterminds where money is a conversation that's pretty freely done, and I'm on podcasts and talking about money and people's relationships with money. But I have to be honest, I'm a little nervous talking to this group because it's the first time, other than my team and the people that are in my world, have I actually had a group of people to where we start talking about wealth and talk about money. Because money is, I've always said there's three things you don't talk about when you go out on a date with people. It's money, sex, and politics, right? When you're with another couple, those are kind of the three taboo subjects, and you'll talk about politics and sex before you start talking about money. It's our society that we live in is so self-conscious, and there's so much emotional attachment to the subject of money that it's just something that we don't talk about. So I wanted to put something together for all of our favorite people and the ones that were interested in it to start that dialogue and start that conversation. I think that there's a difference between wealth and rich. Wealth, I think, is a state of being. Wealth is being able to buy your time back. And so I'm a big believer in building wealth to where you can buy the time back to be able to do the things that you want to do. Rich is a state of account. There are a lot of rich people who are not wealthy. So this is all about how do we start building a relationship with money to where we can start building wealth. Because the statistics are really scary when it talks about in the U.S., 40% of people couldn't come up with $400 if something happened to them, which is scary. There are a lot of people in a really bad place. And the wealthy, when you talk to the wealthy, they look at money differently. They treat money differently. I grew up with money doesn't grow on trees. Money is the root of all evil. It's easier for a rich man to get through the eye of a needle or a camel to get through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into the kingdom of God. Our society is taught that, we can't afford that. And the reality is that money isn't the root of all evil. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil, right? And all of these expressions that we've heard come from a Depression era where there was scarcity. And we typically fall into two categories. We're either savers or spenders. So I was a spender. Who are spenders in this group? Spender, spender, spender. And how many are savers in this group? How many would consider themselves savers? Okay, so we're all jacked up. Dave Ramsey, who is probably the most popular and well-known money person in the United States for sure. One of the guys that worked with him, I was at an event 2 weeks ago, and his name's Bill Hampton. And he met Dave Ramsey when Dave Ramsey had one radio station in Tennessee or Arkansas, wherever it was. Bill was in the kind of entertainment industry, and he was actually driving across the country on his way to Florida, and he heard Dave Ramsey talking, and it was like, who is this guy? But Dave intrigued him, and Dave said something about wanting to get it on another radio station or something, and Bill pulled over, made a call, and started talking to him. So he's worked with Dave Ramsey for over 20 years and watched him build his whole empire. And one of the things that I found that was really, really interesting when we were listening to him talk was that Dave Ramsey talks second grade wealth building. He knows he speaks second grade wealth building. He refuses to speak anything higher than that. He won't talk fourth grade. If someone comes into his organization and wants to talk eighth grade, he will fire them. because he has to speak to a very specific demographic of people who are in a specific financial situation. The problem with that is that there's also the other extreme demographic who hear what he says and it's not to their benefit. Because spenders come from a place of fear. We're afraid of having money. And savers come from a place of fear. Money is security. So for a saver, once they take ownership of that money, for them to let go of that is for them to let go of security. Does that resonate with anybody who's a saver? So we all have these challenges, and what we're hoping to do is find what a good relationship with money is. So I'll tell you what my money story was. I was very fortunate. I've always been comfortable with people and comfortable in sales, and so I've always done well in sales. And I was in the jewelry industry previously for 10 years, and when I left jewelry and got into real estate, we first had the crash and then the recovery, but I was always able to survive, and I basically just out-earned my spending for 30 years. When I worked in the jewelry industry, I started out and my salary was $13,000 a year plus a small commission. I ended up making like $22,000 full-time in my first year, and I was broke. When I left the jewelry industry, I was making $125,000 a year, and I was just as broke. Now, I own my house, but as far as having any kind of assets or any kind of wealth or anything, I was that person that was $400 away from destitution. And when I got into real estate and was really fortunate to hang around a lot of really great business people and had some really great mentors, and was always able to survive and continue to build the business. And through that whole process, I couldn't understand why I couldn't save money. And it caused a lot of angst for me and my family because I was always providing, but there was never really any building that I ever did. And I went and talked to one of my mentors, and it was at a conference. It was a real estate conference. And I walked up to him and I said, Brian, and we've really only had like 3 conversations, but it's amazing how one conversation, a 30-second conversation, can change the whole course of your life. And this was one of those conversations for me. And I said, Brian, I don't understand why I can't save money. I know how to make it, but I just can't keep it. And he looked at me and he asked me one question, and he said, Aaron, what's your dad's relationship with money? And I'll never forget, I literally, there are moments in your life, like when your son is born, when my son was born, we didn't know what he was, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I could get knocked over with the feather right now, right? That surprise. And I'll never forget that when he asked me that question, I had that same feeling because it was the first time in my life that I had ever really had anything brought to my attention about the ruts that we all have that were given from our parents. And when I started looking into my family and started really looking at what their financial life looked like, my mom and dad rented their whole lives. We owned one house and they sold it when we ran out of money so that they could keep going. My grandfather, if it wasn't for my grandmother, would have been destitute living on the street. My grandmother was very financially astute and they ended up having a ranch, but I had no influence from her because women were in the house and the guys were out working with grandpa in the field. But for me, my dad's still not comfortable with money. To this day, he rents a house from my brother that my brother and I bought, that my brother bought me out on in Reno, and they will rent for the rest of their lives because they never had addressed that. So what I started to do was kind of do an internal journey of why am I this way with money? What is it about the money that makes me afraid of having it? And then start putting those disciplines in place to be able to figure out how to start building wealth. And I've been really fortunate, had really great people pour themselves into me to where we are now at the point where I don't have to work anymore. I mean, I work with the West Experience and continue to build the business because I truly love what I do. But my passion is helping people address and figure out what their relationship with money is so that they can start putting the steps in place to start building wealth. Because the reality is you don't go from a spender to a saver over an hour and a half meeting, or you don't go from a saver to having a good relationship with money over the course of an hour. There's a lot of things that we have to do to get to that place. I was with a client, it was probably 6 months ago, and you know where Enoch, is it Enoch's High School on the end of Standiford? Goes out to Sylvan, it's Enoch's. Okay, so I'm the son is a client, and then the mom is the one who, they had all the ranches and all the land that surrounded Enoch's, right? So in 90, when did Enoch's get built? 97, 98, 99, somewhere in that area, 2000. She sold the lot that Enoch's is on to the city. They built the school on it, and they paid her $800,000 for that piece of land in 2000, which, that was a lot of money in 2000. $100,000 in 2000 is $68,000 today. So money has decreased in value by 32%. So she had $800,000. Guess how much she has today in her bank account? $800,000, because she's a saver. So any kind of risk to her, even if she'd have just put that money in an interest-bearing bond account or bought bonds or done really anything with that money, she would have $1.2 million, $1.5 million, $2 million. If she'd have invested it wisely, she would have $3 million out of that $800,000. It's been 23 years, and she has $800,000 to spend. And to me, that's sad. That's just sad that people don't understand the difference between a healthy relationship and a bad relationship. So what I'd like to do is just take a minute and go over what some of the pros and cons are for each one of the money types. Okay, so let's start with savers. What are some of the pros of being a saver? Money for emergencies. Okay, what else? Come on, savers.
Security blanket.
Security. What else?
Retirement.
Say that again. Retirement? Okay. What else?
Could be opportunity.
What?
Opportunity.
Okay. You have money, so you have opportunity? Is that what it is? Okay. Money for opportunity. Is that better? Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? Yes?
You feel like you're doing the right thing?
Okay. What else?
I think to go along with the security would be just seeing it there gives you a sense of security.
Having money. Anything else? All right, let's switch over to the spender side. So let's go spender. Okay, what are the advantages of being a spender?
Instant gratification.
What else?
New toys.
New toys. Okay, what else?
Distraction.
What else?
Don't worry about tomorrow.
Carpe diem. What else?
Maybe some risk tolerance.
Ah. That's a good one.
You get experience, you get experience.
What else?
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Status. What else? Are either one of these bad? No. I'll take instant gratification all day long. I'm good with that, but I've already said I'm a spender. Okay, so let's do this now. Let's go over to the cons of being a saver. What are the cons of being a saver?
You miss out on opportunities.
Okay.
Yeah, it really depends on, because the story about the lady that you told, right? You could call her a saver. She saved $850,000 for 23 years, but she didn't make any money on it. So it depends on how you're saving, right?
Well, it depends on how you're saving. So that's,
Money for inflation.
say that again?
Your money isn't making more money for you.
It's not working. What else?
Inflation is decreasing your account.
Inflation. Okay, what else?
You could create fear. You know, you could be afraid to spend your money, so you miss opportunity.
Fear of loss. Is that right? Fear of loss?
Yeah.
What else?
Short-sighted. Not looking long-term for, yeah.
I would almost disagree with that, because savers, part of their correct me if I'm wrong, part of the savers is I want to have money for when I retire. I want to have money for a rainy day. I want to have money, so it's not fear of the future. They're more afraid of today, loss today, than they are. They're like, I would rather save and lose an opportunity today because I don't know what the future is. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say fear of loss today, not working for a missed opportunity. You know, and I'm going to put this. So one of the things that I've heard is that their future is a very safe future as well. It's save, retire, live on your retirement. Would that be fair for a saver? Okay, so let's say, how would you put that? Conservative future. And would another con be the exact opposite of a spender? No gratification? Or very little gratification? No gratification. Okay, so let's head over here to a spender. So what are some of the cons of being a spender?
You're broke.
You're broke. That's the right answer. What else?
That one would be short-sighted.
Short-sighted, no vision of the future. Say it again.
Always in debt.
That's a big one.
You miss opportunities.
What else?
Stress.
What else?
If you're a spender, your money's not working for you, you're working for it.
That's a good one. What else?
Divorce.
Divorce. Well, if you have one of these and one of these, it's going to happen either way. So you could write divorce under saver also. You just have more to split. What else? Okay. So are either one of these really, would you consider a healthy relationship with money that builds wealth? No. You know, Dave Ramsey, what's Dave Ramsey's mantra? Do you guys remember what it is? What's Dave Ramsey's mantra?
Pay everything to zero and invest your money.
Well, yes, but he says something else too. Live today like most people won't, so you can live tomorrow like most people can't, right? And really who Dave Ramsey is truly speaking to is this person right here. That's who his audience is the spenders, right? But who else is listening? So what do they hear? What does a saver hear when they listen to Dave Ramsey?
Save more.
Good job.
They hear angels singing. It's like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. They're like, oh, Dave Ramsey's so wise. He's doing this. But remember, he's talking about second grade wealth. He's not really talking to these people. He just resonates with them because they're already hardwired this way. So when they hear that and they hear, pay your house off, freeze your credit cards, pay off your credit cards, the best way to build wealth is to have no debt. He's right for these people because they don't know, and they don't know how to do this. Dave Ramsey was one of the first books that my wife and I read, and although he resonated with me, it was really impactful to us because it got us on at least in the same library, right? I don't ever think a husband and wife are on the same page. I think that's a fallacy. If you're in the same library, it's a good marriage. If you're in the same section, it's an okay marriage. If you're in the same book, it's amazing. And if you happen to be in the same chapter a couple of times in your marriage, it's like a 9.5 out of 10. And so what Dave Ramsey did for us anyway was he put us in the same library. We're like, okay, we need to start working on this. Truthfully, the money issue was mostly my issue. But the challenge for my wife was that her dad was also a redheaded realtor who golfed. And in real estate, the income it can be very inconsistent. So she was okay with feast or famine. So when we made a bunch of money and then went out and spent it, it was the life that she was totally comfortable with. So she didn't really have the same money issues as far as spending that I did, but she was totally okay and comfortable with all of these pros and cons because that's how her dad was as well. So it wasn't until we read the book and kind of got in the same library that we started understanding that we needed to address our money issues. So what does a healthy relationship with money look like? Does anybody want to just kind of spitball and say what they think a healthy relationship with money looks like?
Maybe a mixture of both.
Maybe a mixture of both. What does that mixture look like? How would you describe that mixture?
Knowing when to spend and knowing when to save.
You're not allowed to talk anymore because you have all the good answers. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, Gary. So I'm gonna ask a question, and I'm gonna tell a little story, and I just want to hear what your guys' thoughts are on this. So let's say, and I want the savers and the spenders to answer this question, okay? Let's say your aunt died and you inherited $2 million. What would you do with it? What would you do with it?
I'll save half and spend half.
Okay, there you go. Look, we found balance. What would you do with it, Sean?
Probably pay off some of my parents' debt and then do what he did with the rest.
Okay. And then what would you do?
I would probably take care of my debts and probably look to invest. I mean, it depends on what time in my life I inherited the money, right?
Yes.
If I'm 20, I'd probably just spend it.
It's gone.
Depends on what you did, right?
Yes. Well, statistically, when people either inherit a large amount of money or they win the lottery, I think the statistic is 96% of people, no matter how big the number is that they win the lottery, are broke within 5 years. So statistically, what typically ends up happening is even if you're a saver, you figure out a way to screw it up to get to where your comfort zone is. So for most people, when they inherit or win money, they don't have a healthy relationship to be able to handle that amount of money. Now I'm going to give you a little bit different scenario, and I want you to tell me what you would do with this. I want you to, everybody close your eyes for just a second, and I want you to picture your best friend. Not your wife, your best friend. And I want you to picture them coming to you and saying, I need to talk to you about something. I just found out that I have stage 4 terminal cancer and I'm going to die. And I've got a life insurance policy that's $2 million. And what I want you to do is I want you to take care of that money until my daughter is 18, and she's 4 right now. Okay, now open your eyes again. How would you take care of that person's money, your best friend's money? What would you do with that money?
You'd probably do whichever one of those things you're still doing.
I would disagree. What would you do with the money?
You'd have different funnels, so you'd put some in long-term, securities, short-term securities, some in higher risk funds, and diversify it.
Okay. What would you do with it?
I was just going to say something very similar. Distribute it.
Okay.
Stock market, real estate, have a house ready for her as soon as she's ready to live on her own.
Carrie?
I'd seek somebody else's who would have more experience and then invest it with guidance, not just on my own.
Would you treat that money the same? Would you treat your best friend's money the same way that you treat your money?
Probably better.
Better, right? Do you know why? Because you're a steward of that money. You don't have ownership of that money.
I think you would think that you're doing better, but if you have these habits, you're not. So spending, it depends on what you're spending it on. You spend it all in the stock market, and you don't know what you're doing. Right?
But see, the thing, for most people, if they're given a fiduciary responsibility, they treat it very differently than they do. When we're dealing with people and a parent dies or someone dies, it is a very different experience when it's the son who inherits it or someone who's not in the family who is the fiduciary of it. It is night and day, because the son or the daughter or the relative that inherits that money, it's my money. How do I get this money as quickly as possible? Then you're going to do the same thing. When it's someone else's money and you're looking out for somebody else and you're trying to build wealth for that person, you make very different decisions. You're much more long-term conscious. You're much more likely to bring in other people to have a conversation with you about what to do with that money. If you inherited $2 million, you're not going to go, well, I'm going to put this into stocks, I'm going to put this percentage into this, I'm going to do this. You're going to go find somebody who's going to have a conversation with you about what are the best ways for you to take care of that money. Would that be fair? And yet, none of us do that for ourselves. Any of you, other than with your accountant or your stockbroker, had a serious conversation about money? Not with me. And that's a problem, because we all have our own lenses by which we see life through. We all do. We've got our cultural lenses that we see life through. We've got the lenses from our parents. We've got the lenses from our grandparents. We all have these lenses that we see life through. Have any of you seen Inside Out, the movie Inside Out? Okay, so if you haven't, it's one of my favorite movies. I believe it's one of the deepest movies that has been put together for a long time. And if you haven't seen it, I'll give you the premise of it. It's a cartoon, and it's the first cartoon that doesn't have a bad guy. There's no bad guy in Inside Out, which is it's the very first movie that ever doesn't have a bad guy. But the premise is that every time something happens to you, it creates a memory marble. And inside of your brain is this huge library of memory marbles of every single time you have a conversation with somebody, when you hear the Juicy Fruit Gum song, when you hear, everything gets put in there. And then there are these core memories that get put into your brain that shape the life that you're going to lead. They shape your decisions without you even knowing them sometimes. And so one of the core memories of this little girl was that it was her friends surrounding her after a hockey game and lifting her up on their shoulders and her parents cheering. That's how she remembered it. And at the end of the movie, you find out that this beautiful memory that she had came from a moment of sadness. But she didn't remember that moment of sadness until the very end of the movie. And so for all of us, we have all of these marbles in our head that are all back here, millions and millions of them that are constantly being culled through and constantly being added to, and ones that are just being thrown away because they no longer are relevant to us. But there are core memories that we have about finances and about money that we never go back and look at and go, is this the right way? And the truth is, at the end of the day, as a saver, as a spender, whatever is the right decision for you is the right decision for you. But if you want to become a professional athlete or you want to become a professional golfer, you don't go out and stand and say, I watched my dad golf for 10 years. I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to start hitting the ball and I'm going to get really good at it. It's just not possible. And the same thing is true with money. We can't expect our marbles and our memories and those ruts that have been set for us for sometimes generations to be changed without opening up our mind and opening up our perspective. So I think that the secret, or the way that wealthy people look at money, is there's two things. They have no emotional attachment to it. If I asked every single one of you what your net worth is today, most of you would cringe and go, I'm not saying that number out loud. You are smoking crack if you think I'm going to say that number out loud, right? Because in the U.S., it's either a less than, or it's either a greater than or a less than equation. If I say that I'm worth $100,000 and you're worth $1 million, somehow you're a better person than me because you have $1 million. Or heaven forbid, I'm worth 60 or negative 60,000 and I'm talking to you and you're worth $2 million. That makes me a less than person. But the reality is that your net worth is a number. And it's a product of the decisions that you've made up to today. That's all it is. And so, Carrie, do you have the net worth sheet thing? Can you pass that out to everybody? So we're going to have everybody figured out, and you're going to stand up and say it. I'm just kidding. I would like half the people are like, oh. So, have any of you done this exercise before of figuring out what your net worth is? You've done it? You know?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, this was one of the most pivotal things that I ever did. And I won't lie, it was negative $60,000 when I figured my net worth the first time. We had sold our house because we had sold our $500,000 house in 2007. I got a check for $1,200 when we sold it because if I'd have waited 2 more weeks, we'd have been in a short sale. And we literally had no assets at all. And me being the spender, one of the things that when you are self-employed, there's this company that wants money. And every year I would do my taxes, and they would say, you owe $25,000. And I'd be like, what? How does that happen? And then the next year I would get it caught up. But I mean, I was negative $60,000 in debt the first time that I did my net worth. So what you do to figure your net worth is it is a complete inventory of everything that you own. So it is, if you own your house, you write down the value of your house, and it's okay to use this estimate. You're not selling your house, you're just getting an idea of what it's worth. So you take the net worth, the value of your house, and you put that on the asset side, and then you add everything else up. Your grandmother's, your mom's grandfather clock that she left you that's in the corner that's worth $2,000. Your motorcycle, your car, all your furniture. And I'm a big believer in being conservative and being able to defend that number. Because as you become more comfortable with talking about it, you don't want to kid yourself. So don't kid yourself about what your net worth is. It's just a number. And so you add all of those things up on the left-hand side. That's the positive. And then on the right-hand side, you put in your credit card debt, your mortgage, your car, the amount of your car loan, any liability that you have on the right-hand side. And then you take those numbers and you take the assets and you subtract the liabilities. And for me, the number started with a negative 60. So the first time I did that, it was, there was definitely this feeling that I had about who I was when you're $60,000 in debt. But what happens once you know that number is there's only 3 things that happen once you know that number. The first is you make the same decisions you've always made, and the number stays the same. Or you make poor decisions and the number gets worse. Or you start making good decisions and the number gets better. I now look at my net worth at least twice a month. At least twice a month. Because I want my brain to know that it's important and that it's a number that I'm tracking and that it's a number that I want to improve. In my bucket list, I have net worth goals. The first one was get above 0. That was my first goal. And then the numbers 100,000, million, 5 million, 10 million, 20, 50 million. Those are all in my bucket list right now because I want my brain to know that I'm looking for opportunities on how to make that happen. Does that all make sense? So one of the things that I would challenge you guys to do is go through the exercise of figuring out your net worth. If you do nothing else from this conversation that we're having today, and you just know what your net worth is, then that is a win for me. Because then at least you've done something that puts your brain in a different place to kind of move you off of that rut just a little bit. So the next thing that you have, well, I won't go there because it'll scare too many people, but one of the reasons that people don't want to say net worth is because of that less than or greater than. But the reality of it is that it's one of the most beautiful things that you can do financially. And when you talk to someone who is willing to talk to you about net worth, be it your accountant or your financial guy or your best friend or other people, there are hundreds of thousands of people like you guys who want to build wealth and that want to know how to get a good relationship with money. And there are hundreds of thousands of people that, just like this room, have never had a financial conversation other than their financial professional. But when you know someone's net worth, there's 2 things that they can do. It's either you can help them or they can help you. If I'm talking to a guy that's worth $50 million and I'm not, that's someone, he's not going to judge me because he was there. he's going to be able to give me perspective and give me advice on what I can do to improve where I am today. And if I'm worth $5 million and I meet someone who's worth negative 60,000, I was there. I remember what that was like. Or if there's someone that's $1 million. All it does is give you a place where you can find commonality of either helping or being helped. Because there are no emotions to money. Money is a pawn in the chess game of life. That's all it is. And the better you are playing it, and you get to the end of that board, it turns into a queen, and then you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. So does anybody have any questions about anything or thoughts? Yes?
So if you own your house and it's worth $500,000, you put that here. And
Correct.
you put what your mortgage, what you owe on it.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So if you own 500, the house is worth 500 and your mortgage is 320, then you put the 500, and then when it gets subtracted, you'd have $180,000 worth of net worth, right? And that's one of the reasons why, for most people, real estate is the easiest, fastest, and best way for them to build wealth, is because once you own it, the world starts working for you. You're constantly paying it off. Inflation is something that raises the value of everything except for your house payment. Dave Ramsey talks about never using debt, and he is a liar. I know that for a fact, that he has used debt to build his wealth. Because debt can be a really amazing wealth building tool. If you're able to get a real estate loan, I swore I wasn't going to talk about real estate, but I'm in real estate. I can't help it. It's the only thing I know. If you buy a house for $100,000 and your interest rate, and it's not that today, but let's say it's 3%. And so you're making your payment on an interest rate that's 3%. And inflation is at 8% like it is today. The value of everything is going to go up basically by 8% a year. But your house payment is going to stay exactly the same. So that the home value will rise by 8%. You're continuing to pay it down. So real estate is one of the oldest tried and true ways to build wealth. And the other reason real estate is such an easy thing to do is because it's a set it and forget it mechanism as well. You don't need to be super disciplined and have a great relationship with money if you go buy real estate. That's how I built my wealth, is I didn't have a good relationship with money. But every time I got, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, but the only discipline that I put in place was I started putting money away. And as soon as I had enough money to where I had an itch and I had to go buy something, it was either Air Jordans or a house, I would go find a house and I'd buy a house. And we just started putting this system in place where until I had the discipline, I knew what my weakness was, and so I put the discipline in place so that it forced me to start building wealth. So let's talk about a few things that are the biggest mistakes that people make when they're trying to build wealth and to improve their relationship with money. The first mistake, and it's the biggest mistake that people make, is they pay themselves last. So what does that mean?
After all the bills are paid, all the debts paid, then you spend whatever's left.
Yes. So why do you think the IRS takes the money out of your check before you get it?
Because you won't pay them.
So you'll have it.
So that you'll have it, right? They know that as soon as you take ownership of it, either way, if you're a saver or you're a spender, as soon as you get it, that money is not theirs anymore. It is yours. I mean, it's mine. I own it. I got the check. It's my money. Good luck getting it back from me. What do you mean I owe $50,000? That's them. I got my money. You go get your money somewhere else. So they make sure that they get paid first, and you don't ever consider that money yours, do you? When you get a paycheck and you look and you see, IRS and then California government, you don't go, oh my gosh, they took that money from me. You're like, no, that was never my money. I'm never going to see that again. Maybe I'll get a return, but I'm never going to see that again. But you don't get angry with them, and your life goes on just the same, right? So one of the best books for finances is called The Richest Man in Babylon. And if you promise you'll read it, I'll buy it for everybody in this room. That's how strongly I feel about this book. It's a parable. It was written in 1935. It's written like, it's almost written like a Bible chapter. And it's about a man who is the richest man in Babylon, and he's an older man, and someone asked, how did you build your wealth? And he gives these 10 principles to build wealth. And the number one principle is pay yourself first. Because I can tell you this with a fair amount of certainty, if you took $100 out of every paycheck and put it into a savings account, would your life change dramatically? I don't see any hands raised, right? Yeah, whatever. Because, but it's the disciplines. When you talk about building wealth, it's, Gary Vaynerchuk, who's he's an online personality influencer. He says something, because he talks about hard work. He said, people want to get rich fast, but life is long. And one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got really early on in my real estate, or in my wealth building journey, was a good friend of mine, Tim Rode. It's actually her uncle. And he said, Aaron, you get rich by hitting base hits. I was like, well, what do you mean hitting base hits? He goes, everybody wants to swing for the fences. Everybody wants to get rich right away. He goes, but if you think about baseball and the players in baseball, you have these mega superstars who come on, they hit 40 home runs or 50 home runs in a year. They're in the league for 3 years, and then they're gone because they're constantly swinging for home runs, and it's not sustainable. He said the people who make money in baseball are the ones that stand at the plate, and they're looking to put the ball between third and second and first and second. And that's all they're trying to do, is put the ball in play. And every once in a while, that bat will hit that ball perfectly, and it'll bloop over someone's head, and they'll end up with a double. And every great once in a while, someone will throw a 102-mile fastball, and he's swinging for a base hit, and the ball hits absolutely perfectly on the bat, and it squeaks over the back of the fence for a home run. But they're in the game because they hit base hits. So let me ask this question. If you had $1,000, and someone said, I want to borrow your $1,000, and I'll give you, and I need it for 6 months, and I'll pay you $100. So I'll give you $1,100 back in 6 months. Who would do that?
Sure.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Yes. Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
10% return is pretty good.
Okay. It's actually a 20% return.
6 months.
Well, 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
It's a 20% return. Now, the majority of people would be like, oh, you're I'm not putting $1,000 out there to make $100, but that's a base hit. That's a 20% return on your money. And if you do that enough times, then that money starts to compound on itself. So when you have an account that you deem as an investment account, or I called it my not my money account. So literally, F&M Bank, Oak Valley Community Bank, you know how you have your savings account? Guess what I did? You know how you can name your accounts whatever you want? I named my account and I still have that account. I have 2 of those accounts. I have 3 of those accounts now to this day. I actually got rid of them for a while, and then I realized that my relationship with money was not here still. So I wanted to put accounts in place for me to become more disciplined as a saver. So the commitment that I made when I opened my Not My Money account, and this would be something that either way I would challenge either one of you, because this is what all of you to do this, is that what it did is it created separation from me and my money. Because whose money is it? It's not mine. This is for the Aaron that I want to be. This is for Aaron who I have the potential to be. And I made the commitment that I was putting a portion of my paycheck, every single check that I got, was going into that Not My Money account. And it went there first. When the check got deposited, immediately I told them it started with $50. Put $50 into my Not My Money account. And they were like, what? There's an account named Not My Money. There's a long story behind it. Could you please put it in there? And over time, I started realizing that $50 out of every account didn't change anything. My life was exactly the same. So I was like, okay, let's put $100 into every account. And then it went to $250. And then it went to $500 out of every check went into that account. And what happens is you start to see momentum. And as soon as you see that momentum and you start putting those disciplines in place, now opportunities start to arise. Because, and I'll have all of you write this down too, money is not the problem. Write that down. Money is not the problem. Everybody thinks I need money to get wealthy. No, you don't. You need opportunity to get wealthy. But none of us are looking for opportunity because we've got our head down. I get my paycheck. I do my work. Nobody's looking for opportunity. When you start looking for opportunity, when you find opportunity, the money will follow. It's just that simple. When you find opportunity, people with money want to partner with you and reward you for finding that opportunity. The challenge is that none of us, very few of us, are truly looking for opportunities when it comes to build wealth. Christina and I have had a bunch of conversations about it. You decided what? You decided you guys were going to invest in a income property, right? How long was it after that before something showed up?
4 weeks.
4 weeks, right? And we figured out a way to make it work. It was the right house, right value, right price. They figured it out, and they bought their first investment property. And it doesn't have to be property. It could be anything. It could be Bitcoin, for crying out loud. It's just putting it somewhere with a long-term view because it's not my money. This is for every dollar that goes into this account. I will not make my house payment. I will not take that money out no matter what, because that money is what that's for me when I'm 65, 70, 75 years old. That's for that guy. This is for who I have the potential to be, not who I am today. But for me to meet this guy, I have to be putting those disciplines into place to be able to make that happen. Does that make sense? So do you guys have any questions about that? So any questions about that? So the first mistake people pay is not paying yourself first. And that's where and what happens, and this is what happened to me, is that, I wrote this down, your spending expands with your income increase. Has anybody experienced that? That is my life. My spending expanded and the second mistake that a lot of people make, and again, this isn't talking to savers, is keeping up with the Joneses. You know, it's okay to say no to a vacation. It's okay to say, we can't do that because it's not in our spending plan. And another word that I hate that savers love is budget. Who here likes the word budget? Yeah, savers love budget. It's like, oh, it's like a warm, cuddly blanket. It's my budget. It keeps me so happy. You know, for me, I came up with a salary that wasn't what I got paid. My wife and I figured out what is the number that we have by which we can live comfortably. We don't want, you know, for most people, if budget isn't their love language, when they think of the word budget, what do you think of? What do you think of when you think of the word budget? Cuts?
Handcuffs.
Say it again?
Handcuffs.
Handcuffs. Restriction, right? That's how I looked at budget. I can't tell you how many budgets we wrote up that I was like, yeah, that's a really great budget. It was gone so fast it's not even funny. But when we did make a commitment to a salary, because everybody can live within a salary, that's what you get paid. You just go, okay, my salary is $60,000 a year. What is $60,000 a year? It's $5,000 a month. So what if we made our salary $4,500 a month? Could we still live a good life on $4,500 a month? And if the answer is yes, then that becomes your new salary. Until this year, my wife and I lived on the same salary for the past 6 years. No matter what the success of the West experience was, we came up with a number that we could live on and be comfortable and do the things that we want to do. And no matter what the West experience made, that wasn't my money. I looked at that as everything became not my money if it wasn't in my salary. Because there was the separation of church and state. There was my money, and I can do whatever I want with that money. This nice blue jacket here, that got spent with my money. That's how I look at it. That money, if on the 28th of the month, we've spent every penny of that money, we don't do anything for 3 days. We got 3 days of hanging on for dear life. I'll never forget when my son would go through a case of peanut butter a month. A case, like, what was that, 12, 16? Every day was like a whole thing of peanut butter. And it was the 27th of the month, and they were driving, and Jen goes, oh, we're out of peanut butter. We got to wait till the 1st to get peanut butter. And he's like, why? Just order peanut butter. And Jen said, no, because our salary is this. We don't have the money to be able to buy peanut butter till the end of the month, because that was just the commitment that we had made. So what I believe is a really good balance and what a healthy relationship with money looks like is you have full permission to spend your money or save your money or whatever that looks like for you. But then you separate yourself from your money and you take stewardship of this money. Because I can tell you this from my experience, and you savers, you correct me if I'm wrong. If you have $1 million, it's a lot of zeros. If you have $1 million in your savings account, and I say, you know what, I've got a really amazing opportunity for you. It's going to cost, the investment would be $150,000. You're like, oh no, no, I don't think that's going to work for me, because this I'm going to live on this later on down the road. Because as soon as this goes into a saver's account, it's what? My money. So when we're working with savers, or when I've worked with savers in the past, typically whatever they have in savings, no matter what I say, no matter what they think, they will never part with this money in savings. Where's Damien? Oh, he's not. He's got his daughter, huh? They will never part with this money in savings. It is a beginning of a new era for most savers. And it's the same thing that's true with spenders. You have to start at a certain starting point. You can't go back and change who you are, but you can start moving forward. So if you have $1 million in your bank account, whatever that looks like, and I had a conversation with one of our guys who has a bunch of money in his account, and I said, how long could you live on this money? And he looked and he goes, like 34 years. I was like, what? but to get him to go buy a car was like the baby Jesus being born. I mean, it was so hard for him to do because he had ownership of the money that was in his bank account. And we had to come up with some creative ways for him to be able to separate himself from his money to feel comfortable with going out and buying that car, because this was here. So if you're a saver and you've got money in your bank account, I'm not asking, I would never even presume to ask that you part with that money, because that goes counterculture to everything that you are, from my experience anyway. Would anybody agree with that are savers? Yes? Yes? No? Yes? Okay. So what would it look like moving forward if you made the commitment, and this is almost like, it's not throwing money away, but to a saver, that's almost what it feels like, is if they take some of their money and they put it up here and they invest it, they feel like they're losing money. But it's part of that growth journey. So for the spenders, it's the same thing. It's my money and not my money. Is this something that you guys could see yourself doing? And it doesn't have to be a big dramatic change, but is this something that you could see yourself doing moving forward, is creating some kind of discipline to where your money goes to not you first? Yes? No? Maybe? Okay.
Do you recommend not at the 20%?
What?
Do you recommend, is there a number?
You know what? When you're starting, it's the discipline. You've got to crawl before you walk. So the first step is actually just opening the freaking account and naming it. If you can do that, that's a win for most people, right? And if it's $5 out of every check that you do, that's a win, because it's putting that discipline in place, it's creating that separation, and you're giving yourself a new path and a new track to be able to make different decisions on it. Another mistake that a lot of people make, even savers do this, is spending too much money because of credit card rewards. Everybody wants their Marriott points or their United points or whatever, and they'll go, oh, well, I'm getting points for this, and they'll buy something they'll buy something so that they can use those points. So that's something that you just want to be aware of. Disorganized finances. How many people have disorganized finances? Yes. That's something that makes it very hard and challenging to be able to track and see where you're going. There's a couple of really great apps. There's mint.com. Have you heard of mint.com? No? Okay. You write it down. And then there's also personalcapital.com. Both of those are really good sites. What you can actually do is, if you own real estate other than your primary home, Personal Capital is probably a little bit better than Mint. But Mint is a really great starting point, because what you can do is actually do that, basically the same exercise of the assets, and you can load all your bank accounts in there. You can put all your credit cards in there. You can put your mortgage in there. And then there's a spot that you can add individual assets if you want to as well. So it will actually spit out your net worth for you. And then it's a place that you can go to anytime. It automatically pulls everything together, and it'll tell you exactly where you are. I've been using Personal Capital since 2014, so I have a tracking. I'm able to see a graph of my net worth since 2014. And because I've been able to see that graph, it's created that new path in me. So going to Mint or going to Personal Capital, and what that will do too is it'll bring all of your disorganized stuff into one place where you can go look at it, and then you can figure out, how much do I spend every single month? How much do I have total in credit card debt? What are the things I can do to start putting those things in place? Another one that's for spenders is paying extra due to lack of planning. So it's one of my good friends, Daniel Del Real, never buys a plane ticket till like a week before he goes. And he's paying $300 or $400 extra every single trip we take, because it's poor planning. So planning your expenses, planning your trips, planning all of those things make a big difference in paying too much in taxes. Even though you're on a regular, most people have a regular W-2 job, where are the places that you can put money to pay less in taxes? Does anybody have any ideas? 401k? IRAs? What else? What else is there?
HSA.
An HSA is another one, a health savings account. You've got a Roth, IRA, 401k, HSA. All of those places are places that you can put money that go in pre-tax, so you don't pay as much in taxes. So if you have those, most people, it would be prudent for them to maximize those, and especially with like a 401k, your employer matches a lot of the time. So you're actually getting a double benefit of being able to do it. When I left Rogers Jewelers, that was my previous career, so 2005 I left Rogers Jewelers, and my 401k had $38,000 in it or something when I left, and I never touched it. And before 2 weeks ago, it had grown to $200,000 over the course of 15 years. I'd never added another dollar to it at all, but that all went out pre-tax, and then has just built over the course of 15 years. So that's a really good place to just, again, start with those little consistent things to, and the biggest mistake that people make is just waiting to invest. I mean, think about it. If you'd invested 5 years ago, where would you be today? If you'd invested 2 years ago, where would you be today? What prevents you from taking that step today and starting to invest in something? And again, it doesn't have to be big. It just has to be something, and then the momentum just compounds on itself. Albert Einstein, the eighth wonder of the world is compounding interest. And it's the compounding activities that you do. There's a book called The Compound Effect, where he talks about, what's his name, wrote The Compound Effect? Darren Hardy. Darren Hardy talks about the difference of half a degree, just a half a degree difference when you're in a plane leaving from LA heading to New York ends up being like 1,000 miles difference in how it is, because that effect just continues to compound and get bigger and bigger and bigger. So by putting some of these disciplines in place, you start allowing that compound effect to work. Any questions or thoughts about anything I've covered so far? I mean, I feel like I've covered a lot, and everybody's just kind of staring at me like, oh crap, that's a lot. Is there any thoughts? I mean, anybody have any thoughts on anything that I've said or something that's resonated?
So the not my money, and her example of, I guess, when do you know it's right that you put enough into the not my money to make a move? I guess you have to know what you're interested in doing.
Yes, and this actually is the next thing that I had written down was talk about money. When do you know it's the right time? When an opportunity presents itself. But if you're not having conversations with people, I literally sit down when I get on an airplane, when we're out to dinner with somebody, I say, so what are you investing in right now? Where do you put your money? I'll ask people what their net worth is. I usually get the deer in the headlights look like, are you asking me that question? Like, really? Are you asking me that question? But people are willing to have conversations. I don't know if this is the right analogy, but I'll say it anyway. It's like talking about sex to your kids. It's only awkward if you make it awkward. If you just go, hey son, let's talk about sex, and you just lay it out there, they're like, thanks Dad. But when you come into it with all these issues, then those issues are reflected back to you from your kids. And the same thing is true with money. If you just start being open to having the conversation and not, I'm super comfortable with it, so I have no fear at all. I will ask anybody anything when it comes to money. But if you just start asking people, so where are you investing your money? You'd be really, really surprised at how many of your friends, or that some of your friends, are really financially astute and have a lot of wealth that just don't talk about it because they don't want that whole less than, more than conversation. But if you're really open to having the conversation, you would be really, really surprised at how many of them have wealth, are comfortable about talking about money, but they just won't do it with the people that aren't comfortable talking about money. Right? And that's the challenge, that when you're starting this journey, you almost have to be the one that takes the step for someone else to. Because someone who has wealth, one of my really good friends is like insanely wealthy, like crazy wealthy. And one of his expressions that he said one time when we were talking about money was, my dad's, one of my best friend's dads, before he died, we went over to see him, and in the conversation, he said something along the lines of, the whale that comes to the surface gets harpooned. So people with money aren't going to talk about money because it opens them up to so many issues. They're willing to talk about it, but they're not going to walk around going, hey, what are you investing in? I got this opportunity, because they don't know where you are. And that's where having that net worth conversation, and one of the reasons why I'm really comfortable having that net worth conversation, because if I have a conversation with somebody that's worth $20 million, and they know that I'm okay with them sharing that number, then we now have an opportunity to have a conversation. I mean, I've had conversations that would blow people's minds about money and opportunity and what they're doing with their money, that have totally changed the trajectory of my life and the ceiling that I've put on myself. So the answer to your question, that was the long, not the Reader's Digest version answer to that question, is you have to just start being okay talking about money. with your spouse as well. You know, getting in the same library with your spouse is a huge thing. It's the number one reason there's divorces, is over finances and talking about money and having issues with money. So I would say talk to as many people as you can about money. There's great books. If you haven't read the Dave Ramsey book, it's really a great book. If you're a spender, it'll help put some of the disciplines in place. There's another one called The Psychology of Money that a guy named Morgan Housel wrote that just came out a little while ago. That's a really great, easy read that just talks about how people look at money. And then The Richest Man in Babylon. And then, what was the one you just read? Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is another really, really great book that can do it. And then the other thing too is as you start having these conversations with money, just realizing that people who make different financial decisions are not always crazy. It's the lens that they see life through. The guy's mom that has $800,000 in the bank, she's not crazy. She still has $800,000. Right? She's just making a different decision that's the right decision for her. It's not the right decision for me, but neither is this. And the only way that I was able to get out of this was by having that conversation with people who have this relationship with money. And hearing them have conversations about money where they literally just talk about money. It is a conversation piece. Where do you think interest rates are going? What are you doing with your money? How much, they call it dry powder. How much dry powder do you have? How much cash do you have in the bank? So that if an opportunity comes up, because we're going into a period of opportunity right now. I mean, we are in a recession right now. They won't say it for another couple of months. We are in a recession. More millionaires are made in recessions than there ever are unless they print $2 trillion. Then there are some people who become millionaires but the reality is if we're not looking for those opportunities, you're never gonna see them. And they are everywhere. There is opportunity everywhere if you're looking for it. In every price range, in every price point, amongst a bunch of your friends, you would be surprised if you let them know that you're looking for opportunity, how many people will be like, oh, it's funny you say that. I just came across this thing. I've got $10,000. I've got $10,000 that I'm looking to invest. Oh, it's funny you say that. And then something comes up. The world is a crazy place. Do you guys all know what the reticular activating system is? You guys have you heard of that? Okay, so you all know what that is. You just have never heard it called that. So how many of you, all right, what is your car? What kind of car do you drive?
Ford Fusion.
A Ford Fusion. So before you bought your Ford Fusion, did you see any Ford Fusions anywhere?
No.
No, right? As soon as you bought your Ford Fusion, how many Ford Fusions did you see?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
How many old trailers did you see before you bought your old trailer?
Just what I was looking at. Started looking at
Exactly.
mine.
But you come across them now, right? You're like, oh, look at, there's an old trailer. Your reticular activating system is the filter by which your brain allows you to function in this world. We get bombarded with millions of pieces of information every single day, and the reticular activating system is the little tiny piece in your brain that you tell what's important, and so it's looking for those things. If it's a German Shepherd, and your friend says, oh, there's a ton of German Shepherds in the neighborhood, and you go, I haven't seen one ever, and then all of a sudden there's like German Shepherd, German Shepherd, German Shepherd. That's your reticular activating system going to work for you. And so the same thing is true with building wealth. As soon as you make it important, then it starts looking for ways to help you make that happen. So I appreciate we're coming up on 7:30 right now. I didn't want, let me see if I had anything else that was really good. I'll finish with this. Two things. One, time and endurance are the secret to building wealth. And there's a cost to building wealth. But that cost is, there's three kinds of costs, or three ways you can look at the cost. If you're a saver, the cost is putting your money here. If you're a spender, the cost is putting the money here. So there's a cost of doing business. That's the first kind of cost that there is. The second kind of cost is an investment in your success. Same number, could be the exact same number, $5,000, can be a cost of doing business or an investment in your success. And then the last one is opportunity cost. And so building wealth is all about taking that number and saying, what are the opportunity, this one is, what are the opportunity costs that I'm missing because I'm not investing in something other than my savings account? This one is, what are the opportunity costs that I'm missing because I have no, missed opportunities, no vision of the future? So what are the opportunity costs I'm missing by not starting something like this and putting this into place? And so that would be the question that I would ask all of you to kind of just wrap this all up. And then if there are questions, or you guys want to ask questions or anything, obviously I love talking about it, which one of those three, how are you going to look at building wealth? Because if you look at it the wrong way, as a saver, it's a cost of doing business, and it's an expense for you. If you're a spender, it's opportunity cost that you're missing because you don't have the money to do it as well. So anyways, I appreciate you guys all coming out. I hope there was some good information there. Does anybody have any questions or like a perspective, or like you asking about at what point do you know that there's, if I had $1,000, I'd be looking for a place to park it. And I'd be telling everybody I have $1,000 to put it into. And the other thing too, again, I lie. I say it's over and it's not. Is that strategic partnerships are an amazing way to build wealth. A little bit of something is better than all of nothing. So if you're looking for opportunities, and I'm going to use real estate as an example because it's something that I've done. If you're looking for opportunities and you hear about somebody's grandmother who dies and the people are, they want their money today and they don't have the money to fix the house up because grandma bought it in 1950, and you're like, man, there's an opportunity here. You could probably buy that at a deal, and you don't have $300,000. There's someone who does that's willing to partner with you. I will partner with you. If you call me and say, hey, Aaron, I got my friend who wants to sell their house, I'll figure out a way to make it profitable for you, profitable for me, help you on your wealth building journey. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't look for opportunity because they feel like they don't have the money for it. But partnerships are one of the fastest and best ways to build wealth. Is you find the opportunity, there will be a partner that you know, love, and trust that is going to be willing to make sure that you are taken care of for bringing that opportunity to them. So be open to all of those. And people say, what do I invest in? I invest in everything, because there is nothing that if it doesn't make business sense that I won't invest in, because it's just a tool. So if there's a way for me to profit and make it a win-win for everybody, I will invest in everything. So when people say, what do you invest in? Say, yes, I do. So thank you guys. Do you have any questions or anything? No? All right.
I'd just love to say 80-year-old Aaron will love Not My Money.
80-year-old Aaron hopefully will have
My career.
have a lot of Not My Money in there, because I want to be wealthy, and really I've built a business where I am wealthy. I've bought back my time. I don't go out on listing appointments and all that kind of stuff anymore. But I won't lie, being rich would be really nice too. So I've got my rich number and my wealthy number, and those numbers are going to put us in a really good place. And you should have yours as well. $1 million, $5 million, $10 million. You would be. Most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5. 5 years from now, if you're diligent about doing some of these things, you will look back and be absolutely blown away by what you've been able to accomplish in 5 years. So, thanks, guys.